I'm Mango Thunderslice, and today's video is 6, examining the CDC's COVID comorbidity data recently released. Yes, this has been shared probably several dozen million times at this point, by people who kind of get the general gist of what it means, and of course in the converse direction of all the people, defending the COVID narrative, right? The medicultists, and, basically saying that, all these crazy sociopathic conspiracy theorists just want people to die, and this is more proof that they don't know science, right? I really try and maintain some, subscriptions and just keep open my my world to narratives that disagree with me. At least there's not very many logical, rational people who don't really understand the nature of what's going on here. And, we've kind of really coalesced into a new kind of, spiritual and political and economic, philosophical movement, really. And again, that's quite a feat. It's not necessarily been something we did consciously, but really we've all been corralled together because, we're all generally averse to being controlled in a communist dystopia, right? Animal House style. But so it goes, and so it is. We'll play it as it lays. But we the medicultists, right? The medical fascists are really pieces of work, man, as Trump might say, a real beauty. And the way they think is just so insanely pathetic. And again, there's only a few people who I listened to on the other side, and they're not even on the other side, but they're saying, don't you understand that half the country has hypertension, which is high blood pressure, and, basically, lots of people have all these other comorbidities, right? Basically, the data set is that 6% of the COVID deaths that have been recorded were due to COVID alone, and basically no other comorbidities. And of the remaining 94%, they had an average of 2.6 comorbidities. So not an average of 1, not as in they only had hypertension, but they also had some other debilitating condition, right? Some other aspect of their health that was in very poor condition, and this, it had a bearing on their experience with COVID, right? It's like, the straw that breaks the camel's back, or in this case, it's more than a straw, it's a virus, but when a person is already near death, it doesn't take a lot to finish them off. And that's true of old people generally because, drum roll please, yes, we age and we die eventually, but also to young people who are unhealthy either because of, endemic toxicity of their, formative environment, or maybe in the womb, or it could be a genetic thing, and then there's, people who are young who just basically destroy their health through drugs and, shitty food and other just kind of environmental toxins as a result of just the lifestyle and the work that they live in. But so, 2.6 comorbidities. And, a lot of them were, influenza, a lot of them was pneumonia, all these things, again, the flu in this country kills anywhere from 60 to 100,000 people on a normal year, right? There's some years where it's a bad flu season, other years where it's not as bad, and on that note, Sweden actually, for just to explain why their death count was so high initially, Sweden has had very low years in the years prior for the flu. So, to use a crass metaphor, it was sort of, it was kindling in the forest, right? It was already dry tinder, and, these were people who, had a high likelihood of passing away due to regular influenza or other, just normal endemic ailments and illnesses. And so, the argument's very clear and compelling that there were a higher than average number of old people in Sweden who had already survived the last few years of mild flu seasons. So, and coupled that with the fact that they made the same mistake as New York and all the other Democrat states in the beginning, and they put, basically sick migrant, workers inside these nursing homes, and it led to a high death count. But basically right now, Sweden is 0 cases, 0 deaths. They had no lockdown. They basically told people to be smart and to basically, just to wash their hands and just general hygiene, which nobody has a problem with. Not me, not any other right-winger or anybody has a problem with washing their hands, except for maybe the street creatures. They probably aren't so into washing their hands, at least by the look of their hands. But it's essentially Sweden has, they had a GDP contraction, but also you got to consider that a lot of it as an export economy. So if the rest of the world's economy crashes, then Sweden's market for its products and thus its own GDP contracts as well, right? But ultimately 8.4%, I believe, was the quarterly decline annualized, as compared to the United States and our 34% annualized quarterly decline. And, we're juicing the stock market with the Federal Reserve and the mega bazooka of free money. But, and the stock market's at all-time highs, but things are really hard on the ground. And it's not because of the virus. The virus doesn't have a fucking thing to do with anybody's struggles, right? It's basically the lockdown. It's these ill-conceived, completely ham-handed political responses to the virus, and all these politicians trying to grandstand and seem like they're the gallant, valiant hero fighting against the evil, invisible monster. It's really dumb. The whole worship of the medical complex has always been cringe to the nth degree for me. I just, again, I've never had a positive view of the medical system. And it's funny because, again, lots of people in my family and Space Panther's family are, work in the medical system. Funny also that the people who are in the medical system, sometimes, not always, but often are very unhealthy themselves. They're obese, they're overweight, they eat shitty food, basically they don't exercise, and yet, but, they're the medical experts and they know how to respond to diseases, and that means they know about health, right? But it doesn't at all. And it's all part of the same construct and matrix. They use language to couch this whole structure in just this almost religious garb of just this sacred institution. In the UK, their National Health Service, and in this country it's always, the doctors and the nurses, and they're trying so hard and they're doing such good work. And again, there's plenty of people in every realm that are doing good work and are acting in good faith. But we got to look at the structure and the system, right? If we're talking about loading up this country's debt by like $100 trillion for a Green New Deal and, all sorts of socialist stuff, Medicare for all, socialized medicine, we got to take a look at what people's health actually looks like, right? I'm not going to pay for any of your meds, but if you're not even remotely trying to keep your health in control and in a state of, of balance, of homeostasis, of equilibrium, and general wellness. And so because if everybody is supposed to pick up the tab for a mass population who not only doesn't care about their health, but they're actively being poisoned by the corporations who basically, are sustaining them, then this is a problem. And even outside the purview of socialized medicine, we still now see that when people are generally weak and their health is infirm and they have no command over their health, they can be led by the nose to slaughter easier than the cow in the herd, right? And again, these people think that they have such this grand scientific understanding. A fucking 8th grader who took biology class knows more about virus vectors and general infectious, immunology than all of these people marauding and parading on the TV right now, saying that basically, herd immunity doesn't work. I'm sorry, isn't that why we were getting vaccinated? Immunized, right? Because they just assume that it gives you immunity, and so they call it immunization. But it really doesn't. Even the best vaccine has a significant failure rate, and often, again, the viruses mutate, and, it doesn't confer lifetime immunity. Whereas if you actually, contracted the disease and had a strong immune system, and your conditions were mild, and you received the natural antibody immunity, then you would have lifetime immunity. And so, Sweden, understanding what an 8th grade biology student knows, but doesn't, apparently make it into the halls of academia at the very top, is that basically the best thing you can do is let the healthy people get exposed, whose immune systems are strong, and they will have very mild symptoms if they have symptoms at all. And you protect the people who are, near the edge of their life, knowing that they're also, have already contributed to the civilization. They're not generally, working in their 80s. But, so we can really keep them safe, keep them secure and taken care of until basically there is something of a herd immunity among the population. Because then, and again, we don't fully understand all of the nature of infectious biology or even what a virus is. Who knows? We may even find in the future that our conception of viruses was flawed fatally from the very beginning. And that really a virus is really just a piece of endemic genetic material, a sort of exosome, right? Because an enveloped virus and an exosome are basically, they're the same size, they look the same, and it's basically just a piece of genetic material that has exited from the nucleus of the cell, is outside the cell, it goes through the membrane, and basically it's sort of a transmission of information, right? A message in a bottle, if you will, except instead of a bottle, it's a, double layer lipid shell. And it's basically, these are a way for cells between organisms within the same species, as well as between species, to exchange information, right? And this is the way, they say evolution takes, millions and millions of years. Well, that's only if you're relying on, random mutations. But if you have a signaling system between the cells, between the organisms, among all of the different cells in the living, biosphere, then you could have evolution in a very rapid sense. You could have the integration of genetic material very quickly. And so this is really just like we've discovered. We've gone from germ theory of just thinking, run from the germs, kill everything, antibiotics, sterilize everything, to now within my lifetime really, coming into the understanding of the microbiome, of the endemic positive microflora within the body. And these are absolutely pinnacle to health. Again, why probiotics are very good for you is basically it's maintaining that positive population, a constructive population within your body. Because if you have a constructive and strong and cohesive population within your own body, then when a foreign invader comes in, right, a criminal-minded intruder, such as a virus or a microbe or other, pathogen of some kind, it basically, shield wall, right? And the swords come up and basically the spears get thrown and it gets taken out. And then they go and pick up its body, they analyze it, and they realize everything that they need to know to make sure that that sort of monster doesn't come into the body politic, the body politic ever again, right? And so it is a function of memory as well as of combat and coherence on a micro level. And this is again why you are the God of your universe, right? We are the cells of the God, and we are the God of ourselves. And so this is really, this wasn't even known until like the last few years, so within the last decade or two. And this is how I healed myself of migraines. And recent, good friend subscriber asked me in one of the last few videos, like, how do you just come out with language and thoughts and coherent statements just on the fly? Well, a lot of it comes down, I'll do a video about it, but to suffice for now, being filled with light and knowing that you are the God of your cells, really cultivating that universe. It's like inside of my body, it's like a giant universe of trillions of beings, and they're all having a great time. I mean, it's like, it's not all perfect, but it's like my health now is night and day compared to how it was when I was younger. Like, I feel I have way more energy now, in my 30s than I did in my early 20s or my teens. And so that is because I've done that work. I've cultivated my inner universe to the point where it is now a galaxy, basically ruled by the Jedi benevolently. And so people, they have strength and coherence. And so when every cell, again, is like not an impoverished, criminal-minded, illiterate pauper, but instead is a patrician, landowning, clean estate, contributor to the greater, again, body politic that makes up the body, then you have a cellular structure that is very, very strong. And, again, I had E. coli within the last year because I made a mistake and I breached my own defenses. I let an intruder in, and I also just apparently don't know how to cook steak very well on a skillet. But these are the lessons we learn, and why the whole COVID, even in its worst case for the people who are near death, sounds like a walk in a fucking park compared to E. coli, brother. I'd take COVID 12 times in a row before I get E. coli again. Sweet Christ. That was bad stuff. And I don't need to go into the details of that. We'll continue along with the point, is that if you are healthy, you have essentially a 0% risk of dying of COVID or virtually any other infectious disease. But for the purpose of this discussion, again, let's focus on COVID. 6% had no comorbidities. Of that 6%, 90+% was in the older age cohorts, right? Like, mainly in their 80s, some more in their 70s, and then, slightly less in their 60s. And beneath that, crickets, silence. And again, do young people die of COVID? Yes. The ones with leukemia, the ones with cancer, the ones who are already near death because of other reasons. And so it's like the whole world is supposed to break down and shut down every single school because one kid with leukemia and, a bunch of other diseases and was already near death died of COVID. And so here's the real con here. And this is what all the people who are defending the CDC don't understand and just willfully are blind to, as they are with numerous, countless other things, is basically they changed the rules. The CDC changed the reporting rules that they had been going by for 17 years, right? Normally all those other comorbidities are listed on the top line cause of death, right? As in they all were basically there as the primary cause. What they did is they changed the rules so that all the other non-COVID comorbidities got pushed down to the second and third line, essentially as just kind of minor contributions, not necessarily a primary cause. And so, if you artificially bump down all those comorbidities and artificially elevate COVID, then of course what happens? You artificially inflate the death count due to COVID. And this is kind of, probably where, back in March or April, before they started really counting the deaths in earnest, there were 40 or so thousand deaths of the flu that had already taken place in this country. Again, we were coming out of the winter. And then mysteriously, thereafter, in the ensuing months, it was reduced to 4,000. So basically, there's 40,000 deaths from the first few months of the year that basically just got rolled into the COVID death count because they changed the rules. They are absolutely, and people say, oh, they're undercounting because, Trumpity Trump said that he wants to keep the number low. It's like, do you realize that it's not Donald fucking Trump that's counting the deaths, you morons? Anthony Fauci is not even appointed by Trump. He was a hangover. He was basically a holdout from the old swamp, right? And he absolutely is a swamp creature. I've done videos about the HIV hoax and the AIDS, con. Is basically AIDS is a set of different conditions, and HIV has never been isolated. There is no HIV virus, so to speak. And again, to the extent that we see what we're calling retroviruses, and these enveloped shell genetic material is basically probably a weaponized exosome that is a result of oxidative stress within the body. That essentially the body, due to extreme toxicity, is essentially just basically, it's like lifeboats coming off the ship, and it's just basically just bleeding genetic material. It may have been bioengineered of some kind. The point is that there is no real science behind the whole HIV/AIDS hoax. It's always been a geopolitical con, right? To, in Africa, to prevent the diamond miners from receiving any of their due, reparations from the asbestos and the all the particulate matters they get from working down in the mines just wrecks their lungs. They have, emphysema and all kinds of respiratory issues, and they're all dying from working in these mines, getting paid like pennies per day. And basically then, they say, oh no, it's not the diamond mining that caused your diseases, it's basically your HIV, because you're silly, Africans, you don't know how to wear condoms, right? And so it automatically eliminates any of their claims for medical damages, right? And in the United States, there was a lot of social control, but the fact is is that what we're now calling the LGBTQ lifestyle is extremely toxic and harmful to the body. And it produces an extreme amount of oxidative stress. And so this is, why it was primarily, gay men that were contracting the virus, aka just exhibiting the symptoms of oxidative stress endemic within the body and, a completely obliterated immune system. And so what do? They give them AZT. And AZT kills them. AZT is absolute poison. It does not cure anyone. And, this, if you want to watch a movie, what was it? The Dallas Buyers Club. This was a good kind of story about, a cowboy dude who kind of realizes that he gets diagnosed and they're giving him the drugs and he's taking them, but he realizes that he's not really getting better, and he kind of learns about the whole natural supplements, and, this was kind of how the whole thing started to get unraveled and people started to heal themselves. And I know we actually have subscribers who have talked about this, that they went through this experience themselves. But there is so much more going on to health than just, all these external evil things coming to infect you. We have this internal world, and if we do not cultivate it, then it gets compromised, right? A building doesn't have to be knocked down externally to collapse from its own structural failings. And so when we fail to acknowledge that, internal light structure within the body, and we encourage people to poison themselves because, it's all just calories, and there's no point in eating these vegetables and fruits because, it's just sugar and, empty calories and carbs. Like, people, the lens through which they view diet is so insanely just a troglodyte. It's basically like a caveman. Actually, a caveman probably has a better understanding of diet, much better. I don't fully agree with the paleo diet, but if my diet were to be closest to anything right now, it would be paleo probably. But I do eat bread, but just sourdough bread. It seems to treat my body much better than any other kind of bread. Probably because, sour, it is fermented. And so again, it's at least at some level, maybe not as much as a sauerkraut or, probiotic capsule or whatnot. It is, at least it's not wrecking the microbiota, the flora. And so that's really just, again, what we have to keep in mind, and what they have not mentioned at all throughout this whole process about how to keep the immune system strong. In fact, they will ban information from social media just talking about natural supplements that will do exactly that, like turmeric and zinc. And, basically, there's literally, I could go on for literally half hour just naming supplements. Again, I used to work in a supplement store, and I have a photographic memory, right? I could literally fill up a shopping cart for you with all the things that are going to work better than their vaunted COVID vaccine, and it would cost less than $100. Well, maybe if I filled up the shopping cart, it would be more than $100. It would be less than $1,000. Compare that to your vaccine, bill. Compare that to your, what the cost of a ventilator is, and all these other things. Even hydroxychloroquine, which is, an old drug whose patent is expired, still is only the best that pharma can do. And, if I were an old person and I were diagnosed with COVID, maybe I would take hydroxychloroquine at the early stage, as well as a number of different immune-boosting supplements, Nigella sativa, black cumin seed oil, turmeric, colloidal silver, just to manage the infection and, increase the body's electrical conductivity. All these things. I'd have no fear of microbes. I have no fear of viruses. It is because I have control over this realm. And so when people say, people have hypertension, that means they're going to die of COVID. Like, no, it doesn't, first of all. The average was 2.6 comorbidities. So hypertension was not the only thing in their body. Chances are, if they had a bunch of other, diseases, it's safe to say that they're either, old, or they weren't, living very healthy to begin with. And so, hypertension is just one of the many things that's going on. And, again, and my family, pretty much my entire family has hypertension. And, is there some genetic aspect? Yeah, I'm sure. But every person who rolls out it's just genetics, it's my genetics, can shut the fuck up, all right? Because you live an unhealthy lifestyle. And if you were to try for even a few weeks to basically change your diet and bring these things under control, and to take that responsibility and acknowledge the food of the gods, and basically consume that light and that life force, you would find that your hypertension would disappear. I, can all but guarantee it, right? I'm not a doctor, not making any medical claims. Run away from the FDA. But I can say with perfect certainty, based on my own experience as a personal testimonial, that these things work much better than anything the medical system can give. For migraines, they gave me drugs, and they were worse than the migraines themselves. And what worked was cannabis and, probiotics and magnesium and eliminating dietary triggers like dairy and MSG and caffeine. And basically, yeah, man, I can still live. I'm not a teetotaler. I'm not, basically a strict Puritan. I enjoy myself sometimes. I eat candy every once in a while, some sour candies. But ultimately, I have control over that realm. And so the point is, if you can maintain control over your own inner realm, your chance of dying from COVID is nothing. And so to the people who think that we can shut down society, and we should shut down society for the sake of unhealthy people who made their choices, who took their risks for decades, years and decades, to basically compromise their health, if you think we should shut down everything for the sake of them, I'll tell you what I told Karen: go fuck yourself. Peace.
Ah.